Welcome back to TJ's Porch Garage. For the last couple of months I've been focusing on my BMW E30 project car, but now I'm waiting for some brake calipers to arrive and it's time to pay some attention to my wife's 2011 Toyota Avanza. So it's time for the Avanza's once a year servicing. So I've got the usual engine oil and oil filter, as well as the air filter. I've done videos on both of these before. Check it out in the link up here. This is a multi-part video. In parts 2 and 3, I'll be draining and refilling the coolant. And I'll be replacing a broken steering rack boot, as well as draining and refilling the power steering fluid. But for part 1, this video, I'll be replacing the sway bar links or stabilizer bar links. We'll start by jacking up the car. I'm jacking up the car from the front subframe, but because my jack is a bit too tall, I had to drive the car onto a short ramp first. Now we can get our jack stands under the car and lower the car onto the jack stands. Now we can remove the wheels. You should have loosened the wheel nuts before jacking up the car. If they are too tight, you might accidentally make the car fall off the jack stands while trying to loosen them. After getting the wheel off, it's a good idea to slide it under the car as additional protection in case the car was to fall off the jack stands. Alright, now that the wheels are off, we can get a better look at what we're dealing with. And this is the stabilizer bar link. It connects your front suspension to the stabilizer bar or sway bar. You can see this is the sway bar, and that bar goes all the way to the other end, the other side of the car. And so when this suspension goes up, this side of the suspension goes up or down, the sway bar link will transfer that movement to the sway bar, which will transfer the movement to the other side of your car's suspension. Anyways, so this boot is completely gone, so dirt can start getting into the joint here and down there. And it's the same story on this side, driver's side, right side. Sway bar link, the boots are completely gone. And additionally, on this side, the steering rack boot has started leaking. You can see there in the middle. While we're in here, we can check the other bushes. We've got a tie rod end, it's got a boot as well. This one still seems fine. We've got our guide pins here for the brake caliper, and this little boot still seems fine. There's another one at the bottom. This guy here, this one seems fine too. We also have a bushing in our lower arm. Oh, actually it's a bit torn. Yeah, so we'll have to replace this another day. And there's another bushing in there. I don't think we'll be able to see that. Nope, there's no way to see that. And up here we've got our strut and this boot. I'm not sure if it is supposed to seal anything. It doesn't go anywhere. Spring looks alright. Brake line looks okay. It's not cracked. Let's check it all the way up. Yeah, that seems fine. The pads, the brake pad on this side facing outside still looks alright. Still seems to have sufficient thickness left, so we'll leave that alone. And the rotor, there's not much of a lip on the side yet, so the thickness is still good. And the rotor itself looks okay. Looks pretty clean all around. Okay, so let's start removing the old sway bar links. first you have to break them loose. They'll be pretty tight at first. Use a long breaker bar and just get it to start moving. You are not actually loosening the nut at this point. You can see that the joint itself is moving together with the nut, but it's important to break it loose so that you can then use a 6mm hex key to keep the bolt in place, while you use a 17mm wrench to loosen the nut. The other nut is in a tighter position, so there's not much space for your breaker bar. So we have to undo the tie rods so that there is enough space to break loose the nut. While you are undoing the tie rod, make sure to count how many times you are turning the rod before the outer rod comes off, so that when you put the rods back together, you can turn it the same number of times in the opposite direction and keep your car's current alignment. As you can see, it's still not a whole lot of space for the breaker bar, but at least you can use the breaker bar to get started and replace it with a shorter ratchet and continue to break loose the nut. This will be pretty difficult to do with the spanner alone. You saw the nut just broke loose there. Until the nut breaks loose like that, you're not going to get the nut to move with the spanner and hex key. Repeat the process for the other side. With all the nuts either loosened or removed, you can easily remove the old stabilizer bar links. Here are the old links, and here are the new links. Always do a comparison of the old and new parts to make sure that the new ones will fit without a problem. Here's the part number in case you need to buy one. There's no marking for left or right side, and both ends of the links look exactly the same. So I guess the same part can be used on left side and right side. To install the new links, just slide the bolts into place on both the left side and right side of the car before tightening up the nuts. It would be quite dangerous if the sway bar links were to detach from the car while it was moving. So even though the sway bar links came with nylon insert nuts, I additionally used some blue thread locker to ensure that the nuts would not come loose due to normal vibration and operation. I'm just lightly tightening up the nuts on this side so that I can then move on to the other side of the car and tighten the nuts on that side too. Once both sides are lightly tightened, we can then proceed to fully tighten them up. And that's the fully installed new sway bar links. I'm going to tighten up the tie rods on this side of the car by turning it the same number of turns that it took to loosen the tie rods in the first place. But the other side of the car needs a new steering rack boot to replace the old torn one, and I'll also be draining and refilling the power steering fluid. So stay tuned to my channel. Make sure you don't miss the next video.